Hey guys, welcome to another video from Historic Militaria. Today we're going to be looking at the Soviet M38 carbine. And this was obviously the carbine version of the Mosin Nagant. It wasn't the first carbine version of it, but it is the one that is going to be very commonly encountered by collectors. So let's just jump right into it. Our top gun here is a 1939 Izhevsk, which was actually the first year of production on these. Even though it's the M38, they were fielded in 1939, and Izhevsk started making them. And this one has a pretty interesting feature that you only are going to see on the earlier guns. And that is this barrel band here is actually much closer to the rear sight than on later models made past about maybe early 1940. So you don't see many with this original configuration. As you can see, this is going to stay the same. This is non-standard because this is so close to the rear sight. And we'll look at a 1941 Izhevsk, which has not been modified either. And as you can see, there's a lot more of a gap between the two. You've got quite a bit of a gap here and no real gap here. So if you do come across an early M38 with that original feature, that's a really nice thing to have. You don't see too many of those. Most through attrition and refurb kind of lost that. So this is an actual as issued original M38 from 1939. It is an all matched gun, no import marks, and it is actually a Finnish capture. And the only way to tell that is the D underneath your Arsenal mark right here. Little D, very hard to see. Everything else is pretty standard, all the standard markings. There's no boxed SA on this one. It's seen definitely quite a bit of service, but it is in very serviceable condition. I've always got the bolts locked back on these just because that's how I tend to store them. As far as the sling goes, kind of this unusual leather sling, doesn't really look proper, but that's how it came, and that's how it's being left. And then this one down here is going to be more standard of what you're going to see. This is also a non-import marked fin capture, but it's got all your standard stock configuration with your pre-war screwed in sling slot. And you also have that feature here on the rear as well. Unfortunately, the Soviet markings are long worn off on these. They've seen a lot of service in the Finnish military. You've got a typical Soviet, this is probably a Soviet sling with the gun. I know the Finns made slings that were very close, used a lot of captured Soviet ones. Whatever it is, it is. It's got faded markings still on it, but pretty hard to tell. And no markings inside like you would see on modern Soviet ones. And this one as well is marked with your D, and that stands for the Finnish D model 762 by 54, which was their standard, and they just marked them to note that the throat had been opened up a bit more, I believe was the reason. And this is a 1941 Izhevsk, and as you can see, the 41 there kind of looks like a 44, but this is an all-matched gun as well. Just kind of an interesting one to see. You don't see a lot of these unrefurbed floating around, and if you do come across one, it's kind of nice to grab them. There are ones that did come back from Korea, certainly. Quite a few of those are floating around, and they are accessible to collectors. They do bring a premium, unfortunately, or fortunately, if you've got quite a few of them and you want to enjoy them and sell them later. And taking a look at the other side, again, very standard configuration. Your no markings on here. Usually, a lot of times, if you're going to find import marks, they're going to be hidden up in here or underneath the barrel even. And again, this one does not have the import marks. And remember your screwed in Sling slots are going to be the earlier guns and all the original configuration as well, with your typical dog collar type slings and a pretty beat up stock that has seen a lot of service, definitely. But again, still an all matching gun, even though it's missing quite a bit of blue. Kind of hard to find. And we'll take a look at the other side of this one with its really interesting leather sling. Again, it almost feels like it might be a submachine gun sling which has been put on here, which would make a lot of sense because it does fit. But again, no import marks on this one. And remember, that is a definitely key feature on these early guns if you do find in 1939. And it's got the very short space between your band and your rear sight. You definitely have one in the original configuration, which is a really nice bonus to find. Other than that, this is a very standard configuration M38. And again, most, if not all, of the stock markings are gone on this one. But it is what it is, and you would expect pretty much nothing less for the Finnish guns, which saw a lot of service through the winter and continuation wars. Both of these being captures, no doubt. And just interesting pieces of history if you collect Finnish militaria or anything, or even Mosins in general. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll be looking at more interesting rifles, pistols, and everything in between. Remember, if you enjoy looking at this, like and subscribe, and we'll be doing more content shortly. Thanks for watching.